Welcome to Lifestyle Solopreneur, the community for entrepreneurs who put lifestyle first. Join your host, Flavia Barris, as she interviews successful lifestyle solopreneurs and shares ideas to help you find the perfect balance between lifestyle, business, and self. Flavia is an attorney, marketing expert, and founder of several online academies. She's been featured in major media, including BBC World News, The Wall Street Journal, The New York Post, ESPN Television, and more. Join us for this episode of Lifestyle Solopreneur.
Hey, Lifestyle Solopreneurs. Today we get to speak with Tony Martignetti. He is a trusted advisor, leadership coach, and facilitator. He's also a best-selling author and a podcast host and speaker. He brings together over 25 years of business and leadership experience and extreme curiosity to elevate leaders and equip them with the tools to navigate through change and to unlock their true potential. He has been recognized by Thinkers 360 as one of the top 10 leadership coaches and by LeadersHum as one of the biggest voices in leadership in 2023. He hosts his podcast, which is called the Virtual Campfire, and he's the author of Climbing the Right Mountain, Navigating the Journey to an Inspired Life. Welcome to the show, Tony.
Thank you so much. I'm so thrilled to be here with you.
I love the title of your podcast, by the way, the Virtual Campfire, because who has not had some of the most profound, sort of life-changing revelations and experiences gathered around a campfire? I mean, we call it in my family, Park Ranger TV. It is, you just gather around, you stare into the flames or off in the flickering lights and the magic of the starscape above you. And, you probably just had either a really good meal or in the case of one of my camping adventures, an empty stomach because, the person in charge of food sort of had to fail. But, I love campfires. So tell us a little bit about your podcast. But before we get to that, how did you get to where you are now as this leadership coach, facilitator, this author? This is what you do now for a living. How did you end up here from where you were?
Yeah. And I guess I will talk about my podcast, but I guess in sharing my journey to getting here, I'll talk about a concept for my podcast, which is called flashpoints. I talk about these flashpoints, which are points in your journey that have ignited your gifts into the world. And I had a lot of flashpoints in my journey that got me to realize that I wasn't doing the work I was meant for, and that I had to follow this inner calling, if you will. I was spending most of my time in my life, 25 years working in the biotech industry, and first high tech, then biotech, particularly working in finance and strategy jobs. And what I realized is that it was a great industry to be in, but I wasn't that finance person. I wasn't the numbers guy, as you might want to call it. And people would say that to me. They would say, you're not the typical numbers person. It seemed like you're something's different about you. And I would ignore them and say, but this is what I do, and this is what I'm going to do. And I keep on working harder and harder and harder until I found myself burning out, trying to be something that I really wasn't meant for. And the internal burnout was not really something that people saw. It wasn't on the surface. And eventually it became something that I couldn't live with any longer. And so I started to seek help in different places and slowly but surely worked myself out of kind of a deep depression, burnout. And then finally woke up to this idea that I need to choose a different path. And that all came to a head when I was sitting in a boardroom at a biotech company and looked around the room and saw these leaders who were not doing it for the right reasons. They were more concerned about their own image and whether they were right or wrong. And I said to myself, I think I'm done kind of playing this game, if you will. I've been collecting a paycheck, a really healthy paycheck for a number of years. And now I'm ready to do something that is really bold. And so I decided to get up and walk out of the room. And I said to myself that I'm going to leave this room to change this room, because we're here to save lives, not waste people's time. And that's what I decided to do. And of course, this was not an easy thing to do because I was then called to decide what that looks like. I didn't know the start of a new chapter. I'll pause there for a second to see if your reactions to that.
Well, the new chapter thing, it's huge. I mean, in my family, we always use that terminology. Maybe because I'm a book nerd, but chapters, I love it, and turning that page and doing different things and having a life that contained different aspects, right? Think like you were in that world for quite a long time and you sort of rose through all those ranks and that you found your success there. And now you're doing something that's completely different, but was in you the whole time. People saw it. He said, like, you're not just like this finance guy. There's something else there. And clearly there is. So a lot of people ask leadership coach, like, what's a leadership coach?
Yeah. Well, a coach in general, let's start with a coach and then we'll get into leadership coach. A coach in general is someone who can walk alongside you and kind of see the things that you may not see, the blind spots, the things that you're not really examining about your journey. And as a coach, it's really about not giving the answers, but it's about revealing the answers in a co-creative process with the person you're working with. And I chose a leadership coach or the path of being a leadership coach because of the fact that I feel like we need the right types of leaders in the world. And really, everybody's a leader in their own way. I often connect with this idea that self-leadership is the start of all leadership. If we're not leading ourselves, there's no way we're going to be able to lead others in an effective way. So you could take the leadership part of leadership coach out and just call it a people coach and it still have the same meaning. But it's really about helping people to reveal more of who they are through exploration of themselves. And I will close with one other thing, which I love to say is my tagline for my business is inspiration through honest conversation. And that first honest conversation is really with yourself. Who do I want to be? Where am I holding myself back because I'm creating a narrative that doesn't serve me?
And so now for a living, you're doing something that so many people stuck in the corporate grind tell me that they wish they could do. You're doing a lot of those things, but I've had individuals tell me, I want to be a coach, or I want to be an author. I want to write books, or I want to host a show of some kind, either a podcast or YouTube show or something. Or they say, I love public speaking and inspiring others, and I want to be up on stages, changing people's lives. Well, you're doing like all of that, the whole gamut, and you're doing it as a career. So what advice do you have for someone that right now is punching the clock, working not even 9 to 5, they're working like 9 to 9, on call all the time. And it's just so hard these days to have a corporate job because so much more is expected of us when we're so connected with Zoom and we can work from home. But that means they're like, oh, then you're always available because you're home. Or with even just the availability of our smartphone in our pocket, where supervisors and coworkers think like, oh, well, let me just email you right now. And there's that temptation to always check it. So there's people that are kind of stuck in that world, but they would rather be in your world. And what are some of the first steps to following in your footsteps and doing what you do for a living?
Yeah, I love what you're getting into here, and I'll reframe it a little bit to say it's not about following what I do. It's more about really getting clear about what they can change in their world that will make them feel more alive and more aligned with who they want to be. Whether that means changing the system that they're in right now. And what I mean by that is that we have more control of our environment than we think. It's all about shifting our perspective about what's going on in my environment. And then in terms of getting into another field, like whether it be coaching or speaking or writing books, all of that's a possibility. It's not as easy as it seems. There are a lot of challenges along the way, which we can get into. But I would say that make sure it's truly a passion, something you're willing to put the time and effort into, and make sure you follow the specific things that really light you up. For example, for me, I realized in my journey that I was a creative as a child who held back a lot of that creativity because there were people in my life who told me, hey, you got to get into a career that's going to feed your soul and going to feed your family, I should say, not your soul. And that's what led me to pre-med and then eventually into business. And reality is I've come back to myself and I've realized that the work I do is not just about coaching, it's about being creative. And that's at the core of all the things I'm doing, the creativity that I'm tapping into that really is innately who I am. If creativity or doing things that require you to get out of your comfort zone is not your bag, then you're going to have a hard time doing some of the things that a coach might do. So,
well, we lifestyle solopreneurs, we like to listen to podcasts because we're all here. And we like to read books because that is how we better ourselves and learn. And you've done both. You've written a book that I hear more about. And also you have a great podcast, the Virtual Campfire. So tell us a little bit about the Virtual Campfire. So for anyone looking for more podcasts to tune into and listen to, what's the format? What would they get out of that? And then after that, let's chat a little bit about the book, Climbing the Right Mountain, which, I love that title. And tell us a little bit about the premise of the book and what it's about.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I mean, honestly, I'll start with the podcast first because that came first. So we'll go there. I never thought I would have a podcast. And this came out of this realization that the podcast started from this idea that I wanted to bring people together to share stories of transformation, like what made them do what they're doing. How did they get where they are? I say on the show that, you see people on stage sharing a powerful message, but we have to also honor the journey that got them there. Everything's not as it seems on the surface. You have to unearth the moments that ignited their journey to that. And so when I bring people on, it's not about star power necessarily, but it's about really looking at people who are willing to share from a very honest place. That's why it's a campfire. There's this sense of warmth and honesty that we share around the campfire and stories. And when people come there, they share these little moments that were vulnerable, that caused them to really shift their perspective and learn new things about themselves and the world around them that now have them showing up in a very different way. So that's a long answer to what is the podcast about. It's about that, from creatives to business leaders to thought leaders to musicians to artists of all sorts. So it's been a great journey, 200 plus episodes.
Amazing. Sounds great. Can't wait to tune in. And then your book came later. Tell us about that.
Yes. So I've always been fascinated with the mountains, and I've climbed quite a few mountains in my day. In fact, last year I climbed Kilimanjaro, which was quite an undertaking, 19,000 feet. So the idea of climbing the right mountain was, using the analogy to kind of explore our way of navigating through our careers and through life. And how can we really change the way we're looking at the climb? In my own journey and through the ways that I was working with my clients, I realized that not everyone, but a lot of us work so hard and we sacrifice so much to get to the top of the mountain and then realize it's not what we expected. And we give up so much. And then the view is not really all that fantastic. And we have to kind of weigh off all the things that we've given up. So it had me thinking about how can we climb the right way and ensure that we're defining success on our own terms, not based on what society thinks success looks like. And it had me really exploring the idea of what is fulfillment and where does fulfillment come from? And what I came to realize is that fulfillment is a mindset. It's a place to come from, not a place to go to. And in the book, I've come up with these guideposts that will help you to change your mindset and to rethink your climb so that you can come from a different place that will allow you to reframe.
What are some of your own techniques for sort of staying sane in an otherwise frenetic, crazy world where we are not spending enough time around campfires and where we're not, spending time out in nature, climbing mountains? A lot of people are sort of chained to their work and at their desk or at their screen or whatever it is that they do. I mean, it fills up the majority of their time. But, I find that people like you who have kind of broken free from the corporate grind and have found something that's much more self-determined. What do you do to keep your life balanced?
Yeah, it's a great question because I often jokingly say, you can't become a prisoner of your own life. And if you're becoming an entrepreneur, sometimes we become this, we've traded off our corporate life to something that becomes exciting because this is our own baby, if you will. But we have to be careful because it can be all consuming, especially when you're excited to dive in. But if it becomes all consuming, then it's a prison of its own making. But the way that I've started to change that up is over the past 2 years, I created this thing called the Weekly Spark. The weekly spark is this once a week. I sit down and I really intentionally design my weeks by first looking back and then looking forward. And what I do is I ensure that I plan for at least one or two things in the week ahead that is for me, not just for the business or for the work. And it has to be something that lights me up. So if you were looking, this is the message to the people who are listening. If you were looking at your calendar in the week ahead and you look and you say, gosh, I don't have anything to look forward to next week. Everything is just lots of work, lots of meetings, and just nothing that really fills me with joy or excitement, then change that. Put something on the calendar. Maybe it's coffee with a friend or dinner with your loved one, and use that as the driving force to motivate you through the week.
I love that advice. Yes, all of us need to have something on our calendars that when you see it, you get excited because it's coming up. The anticipation, that forward. In some ways, like when people fall into depression, some of it is like just this lack of that feeling of looking forward to the future. And you kind of get like hopeless, right? And obviously, I'm not talking about like medical heavy depression, but even just that kind of light feeling of like, not really feeling it. Well, look at your calendar. Do you have anything you're excited about that's going to happen next week or the next month or, this coming year? So I love that advice. So thank you for sharing that, Tony. I think it's really valuable. So if someone wants to connect with you, where do they find you? What's the best way for them to reach out and find a link to your podcast and your book and everything you're up to?
Well, the best place to find me is on my website, which is iPurpose Partners. That's a weird name, but it's that's the URL I've got. So the company's name is Inspired Purpose Partners, and the website's iPurposePartners.com. And if you go there, you'll get access to my book, my podcast. There's a link there, and a bunch of other fun things you can sign up for if you'd like. And then you can also find me on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I'm always sharing cool things from myself and other people who I talk to.
Well, Tony, you're amazing. Thank you for all you do in the world to inspire others and to change lives. And thank you especially for your time today on the podcast.
Well, thank you so much. It's been really enjoyable.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, and if you leave a review on iTunes, I promise I will read every single review. If you know someone who makes a full-time living from part-time work, and maybe this is you, please visit lifestylesolopreneur.com to nominate a guest or to nominate yourself. Because remember this, money doesn't buy happiness. But money in the hands of a happy person, there is no greater tool.
Today's episode was brought to you by the Get Shift Done program. It's a lifestyle-changing online class to help you define your business and lifestyle ambitions and to set goals in a way you've never experienced before. This class will 10x your daily productivity with methods that will blow your mind. And if you use the coupon code podcast, the class tuition is 99% off. Visit GetShiftDone.com to enroll today.